Hello, beautiful people. So today we are baking a keto-friendly breakfast type cake. It's a zucchini apple cake, but this recipe is actually from healthysubstitutes.com and they call it their scrumptious low carb cinnamon coffee cake. Let's make it. Okay, so I have the stove on medium heat. We're going to start with 2 tablespoons of butter. You're going to pour that butter in. You're going to see it bubble. You're going to kind of swirl it around in that pot. Okay, you want it to get a little melted because you're going to be adding the zucchini right now. And what you want to do is use the zucchini instead of apples. The recipe calls for apples, but we want to keep this low carb. So I actually cut the zucchini into small pieces and I'm coating it with the butter. So once you coat it, you want to make sure that the heat stays even. Move it around with your spatula. I'm actually showing you a bag of the allulose. That's a sweetener that does not raise your blood sugar. And you can get that at Trader Joe. I think it's a good brand because it's very small. So you see here in the bowl, I am actually mixing that around with the cinnamon and the apple spices because we want to give this more of like an apple pie feel. So you're going to swirl that around and you're going to make sure that it coats evenly and it's going to come to a simmer again and then a boil. And you'll see in the next clip how it starts to come together. And zucchini is going to spring its own water. So just watch how it takes on its own effect. Made half cup. Excuse me, I think the recipe uses 1 cup. Okay, so because we're not using apples, which are higher carbs, I'm going to be using triple O flavors, apple flavoring. So this one is apple double, and this one is apple Granny Smith. Okay, so this is how we're going to mimic the apple taste. If you don't have these triple O flavors, you could look on Amazon and see if you can get some apple extract, which would be much more economical, but these are pretty strong. So I usually use like a teaspoon or so of both. I go by the smell because I feel like once I have the smell, I have the flavoring. All right. So I'm going to do that now. And this usually gives me a hard time to open, so let's hope it doesn't. All right. Let's not drop this. All right, and like I said, this is a good recipe to have for during the week when you're prepping. I'm always looking for something that's easy to grab because sometimes I'm running from meeting to meeting and I don't have time to make something. So instead of you grabbing junk, and also don't keep junk in the house, then you won't grab it. You have already food that's prepped. All right, so that was the apple Granny Smith. I used a teaspoon. I may need more of the Granny Apple Smith because nobody got time. So I'm just gonna end up using 2 teaspoons of the apple Granny Smith from Triple O Flavors. I'll tag them. I've had these for a long time. And sometimes it's best to buy them in the sets, but because I don't use them that much, I don't prefer to buy them in the sets. I usually just buy the, this is the 1 ounce, all right? All right. All right, so I've added that to my apple mixture. All right. And now next you're supposed to be adding almond flour and walnuts, all right? So I'm just gonna do like a little mix. And that's gonna help it to come together because this is gonna go on top of your cake portion when you make it. All right, so I'm just gonna like sprinkle it. All right, and just combine. And it's gonna like get very thick, but this is what's gonna be going on top. And you can see what I did with this prior to when I post my video. But someone actually asked me for this recipe if I still had it. And by me looking at it again, I said, you know, I haven't made this in a long time. I think I'm gonna make it again.
So shout out to Kitches that asked me, what was that recipe you made with the coffee cake? Because it's a good one. So this is how it looks. All right, so that's done. Now we're gonna cream our liquids, okay? I think this butter is supposed to be melted, so I'm gonna go melt it. I don't think it says that in the recipe, but this will be hard to combine. So this is 6 tablespoons of butter popping, all right? But in the meantime, you're going to be just cracking your eggs, and you're gonna be mixing your eggs and sweetener together. Because I wanted to save space, I actually put my sweetener in this mixture. So in this mixture, we have allulose. This is the Trader Joe brand. All right, this brand. All right, it's easily accessible. So I just get it from them, and it's nice and fine. Let me show you. You see how fine that is? So it easily mixes out. This uses coconut flour, almond flour, and these are your your rising agents, baking powder, and there's some dash of sea salt in the middle. All right. So what I'm gonna do actually is try to scrape out some of this sweetener so I can cream it with the eggs. And you usually try to do that, and you'll see even with a lot of my recipes, I like to, even though it's a dry ingredient, I like to cream it together with the eggs, because once that emulsifies, it really makes a difference in your baking. You ever bake and then you realize like, oh, one part is sweet, the next part isn't. All right, so just gonna mix. And I'm like pretty tired, but I know that if I don't do this, I'm gonna be looking for something tomorrow, and my dip is like 3/4 done. No, I'm lying, but I was like spooning some of it and eating, so I'm gonna have to make some more during the week. All right, so that should be enough. I'm gonna check the butter. It should be melted. It's melted enough for me. All right, so I'm just going to add this to it. And we're gonna mix again. So the goal is to mix maybe like for like 2 minutes, because you want to emulsify everything. And that's another tip for baking. Your ingredients should be room temperature because they mix better that way. And when you're mixing your sweetener, your eggs, you want the mixture to be pale. All right. And once this is pretty pale, I'm gonna stream in the almond milk. The recipe calls for almond milk, and it also calls for like vanilla. I think this is good enough. Almost spilled that. All right, and whenever you do your dry ingredients, you should always mix it before you start pouring, okay? And that just ensures that everything is fully combined, okay? And I will tag healthyrecipes.com, and I will put the URL in the note, but it's not gonna be like clickable. So just, you'll just go to the site and look it up by the name of the recipe, which they called it Scrumptious Low Carb Cinnamon Coffee Cake, okay? So before I forget, I'm just gonna put in my vanilla. And this is another thing that usually gives me trouble to open as well. And if it does, I'll just grab my other one, which just gonna grab my other one. So this is some Mexican vanilla my friend brought back from Mexico. Pretty good. So I use this too. It's easier to open. So 1 teaspoon. And this is an easy recipe. All you need is a springform pan. They said like an 8-inch. I think this is an 8-inch, and I'll spray it, but it just makes it easier for you to loosen the cake. All right, and then you'll add your almond milk, and then we'll add the dry ingredients.
So I'm adding the rest of the wet ingredients here, and then I'm gonna add the dry ingredients and make sure everything is fully combined. I also was explaining to the audience that if you don't have the triple O flavors, you can order some apple flavoring from Amazon just to make it more economical. That's what I use for my zucchini recipe in my cookbook as well.
Times people can't get like, you know, these concentrated like flavors. So I want to make sure things are accessible and it gives the same effect. Oh, also, you know what I do? Because in one of my recipes that uses like an apple flavor, I have like this thought about that since I couldn't open this. So that person that asked me where did they get the triple O flavors, you can also look for apple spice flavoring. So that way it can help give you that kind of apple taste without using actual apples. And if you really want to, you can use some apples. If you're not, it depends on where you are with your macros. It's not going to kick you out of ketosis. All right. So there's some people that say, oh, that's not keto. There's really no such thing. The point is it going to kick you out of ketosis or not? And some people have a higher tolerance for carbs, so it won't kick them out of ketosis. And sometimes you don't know. So just try it, check. Have something, maybe you can do half and half, maybe half zucchini, half apples, just so that way you can keep the carb count lower, because I'm all about being practical, okay? And I'd rather you be practical and be happy than be unhappy and then you end up falling off the wagon and it's not a joy for the journey. This is not just a fad. You want it to be like a lifestyle. So I'm just using like 1/4, I think, 1/8. 1/4 teaspoon of apple spice. And that's only because I couldn't open the other one. All right, so this is mixed enough. I used everything, yep. One thing though, I mean, if I wasn't recording or preparing, I probably would have been done already, but it really helps to prep everything out. And then just move systematically. You won't feel like overwhelmed. So I don't use like the baking spray that you usually find in the supermarket. I just use this coconut oil spray, and I can get it from Trader Joe. And I use this a lot. All right, and I also have like a circular parchment paper inside. All right, in view, yep, I am. And I'm just gonna spoon this right into the pan. Okay, that's it. I kind of love recipes that don't do too much, although I am pretty like fancy sometimes, because sometimes technique really makes a difference. All right, so one tip also, when you're smoothing out your batter, it's always good to wet the spatula because it actually helps you to smooth everything out really nicely. All right. Okay, I should have wet this more, but that's okay. All right, sorry guys, I'm just gonna bang a little bit. All right, I always bang a little bit so that way I'm getting the air pockets out. All right, so this is what we're looking like. So this is gonna be your cake portion. And this is going to be like your apple crumb portion, okay? And it's pretty thick because we added almond flour to it. So you'll be like, when you see the recipe, you're gonna be like, that's all the flours I'm using? Yeah, because the top is also going to cake up a bit and it's gonna get like a nice depression. So sometimes I try to make sure like it's as smooth as possible and the middle has some type of a well. I think that's good. And now we're just gonna pour this right on top, okay? And this part also you're gonna smooth out, okay? So just strategically place it down to make it easier for you to smooth it. Already, I maybe haven't made this in maybe like a year or two, but one thing when I started keto, not all recipes were created equal. And I don't know if some of you guys have been following me for a long time, you know that I used to like testing recipes. So see if it's good, and if it's good and I give it a thumbs up, I tell you guys. So that way you're not wasting ingredients. So these are one of them. And I keep all the recipes that I love. I have it saved in my favorites. So that way I can easily recall it whenever I feel for something of that effect. Okay, and sometimes testing recipes help you to learn more about the science of baking ketogenic, because remember there's no gluten in majority of keto baked goods. So you have to kind of get familiar with the science of how to mix the flours, how to mix the sweeteners, stuff like that. All right, so I think this is good enough for me. All right. All right. I'm going to show you guys, and then that's it. It just goes into the oven. So 45 to 55 minutes. Of course, you'll check it. If you feel like the top is getting too brown, you can always put a foil over it, and it will prevent it from browning any further. And
Thanks for watching. Follow me on Instagram at JMilaCooks.